Hello and welcome to Happily Ever Reality. I'm so glad you're here. You guys, we have a new video over on McKelty and Tony's Patreon, and it is an interview with Aspyn. Now, if you can't remember where Aspyn falls in the whole line of Brown children, I will remind you she is the oldest child of Christine and Cody Brown, and she is the second oldest of all of the Brown children. The only child older than her is actually Logan. So she is one of the older Brown kids. She is also just 15 months older than McKelty, so they're pretty close in age. The interview is about an hour and a half long, so it's a really good length of time. I will tell you the first 40 or so minutes is really Aspyn talking about where she is now, like what's going on with her life. And that's something most of us don't know a lot about because Aspyn is a really private person. She said back when she was planning her wedding, she found herself worrying a lot about what people were saying on social media. She was worried about their opinions, and people were always, telling her things, like letting her know what they thought about her wedding planning and her relationship. And she said she realized then she just wanted some things to be private. They do end up talking about the fact that Aspyn and Mitch don't have children yet. She says that right now she's not pregnant. She doesn't want any kids. She really wants to wait until later. She's just not ready for it now. I will tell you, Tony, and I mentioned this in another video about Tony and McKelty and their Patreon channel. Tony really asks a lot of questions. He does try to get, in deep. He asks a lot. And he asks a lot about her having children and her fertility. And I'm just not going to go into it here, but he does ask a lot. If you're interested in knowing more about that, that is on their channel. But right now, if you're just wanting to know about Aspyn and her having kids, she's just not in a rush to do it. She would like to wait until later. Oh, and something new and something kind of exciting for them. Aspyn and Mitch just bought a house. It is older and it needs some work done, but she says right now she feels really satisfied with where she is in life. So that's another reason she says she's not in a rush to have kids. She's just happy with where she is and what's going on. Tony does point out that Mitch is really good at doing DIY projects and house projects, so he knows that the house is going to turn out well. Tony also points out that it's good that Mitch is good at all of this because the Brown family isn't, and that Aspyn really doesn't have any family that can help her with doing any projects around the house, which I thought was kind of funny for him to throw in there. But it sounds like Mitch is great at this, and it sounds like they're excited to start in on doing the work they need to do on their house. So we've sort of had a life update when it comes to Aspyn and where she is now, but Tony moves on to asking about what it was like when they first started dating. And Aspyn explains that they had started talking in February because they liked each other, and then in March he had asked her to be his girlfriend, and by December they were engaged and they were married the following summer. So if you watch the show, you know that Mitch and Aspyn dating was kind of a big thing in the Brown family because the Browns already knew Mitch's family. And that is something Tony acknowledged. He said when he would go over and visit, there was always this excitement about whenever Aspyn talked to Mitch. Like the whole family seemed really excited about it. So, Tony noticed it as well as the viewers. I definitely picked up on the fact that everyone was excited about Aspyn and Mitch dating and, getting married. And Aspyn felt it as well. She said she felt like there was a lot of pressure and that her and Mitch just made a decision that they weren't going to let fate or their families, play a role in it. They were going to just do it on their own. And, if it was going to work, it was going to be because of them, not because of any outside pressure. We find out that Aspyn is now working as a store manager in a Kendra Scott store. She says that she has worked in the jewelry industry for 8 years now, and she really likes it. I couldn't help but wonder if she's ever offered to help Robin with My Sister Wives Closet, but I have a feeling that's a no. She says she really likes being the store manager, but she did enjoy planning events the most because it was a lot of fun. But she says she just, this is where she's happy. She's happy with her job right now. McKelty and Aspyn end up talking about what it was like in college when they lived together. We find out that Aspyn was in a sorority and she was the president of her sorority, so she was totally into it. Mykelti and Aspyn lived together for a while. They said they had a lot of fun times, but, as it went on, they just spent less time together because they had school and then multiple jobs, and they were broke, which isn't uncommon for college students or young people. They just said they didn't have a lot of time to spend together at the end, and they just decided, they weren't going to live together anymore. So there is a point, though, when they talk about not having a lot of money where you hear Aspyn say she had to use payday loans, and they were both working multiple jobs, and, she says we ate a lot of potatoes. So, of course, if you've ever bought a bag of potatoes, it's a pretty darn cheap food to eat. Here's what is a little bit strange to me, though. If you have ever been in that position where you're a young person and you're out there trying to make your money last, it's not uncommon, to have to work multiple jobs or eat cheap food. But what is kind of uncommon is that you're that young person and your family is on television and has a show. And, you think, I don't know. Maybe I'm not being fair to like Cody and the moms here. There's a part of me that's like, couldn't they give them a little money? I have a feeling it was a no. I have a feeling there was very little help from the moms and dad, but I don't know. I'm being a little hard on them. I'm catching myself do it. You would just think, not necessarily that they would be living some like amazing life. It's not like they're, big celebrities, but I wonder if they helped them out any. I don't know. Her having to get a payday loan sort of stands out to me a little bit. I don't know how common that is. You know what? I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna jump to conclusions. I know everyone lives differently. It just seems like maybe they could have helped out a little. You know what? I'm not doing it. Okay, we're moving on. Aspyn did end up moving in with Robyn, though. So, Mykelti and her live together. Mykelti moves out first, then Aspyn moves out, and she ends up moving in with Robyn. And she did that because there wasn't any room at Christine's. So she moves in with Robyn. She said she wasn't there that much because she was at school. She was still doing the sorority thing. She was working multiple jobs, so she just wasn't there often. She doesn't say how long she lived there, but she says she thought she moved in with Robyn around July 2015. But she says all of the memories she has are good. She did mention that Mindy was there a lot because Mindy was nannying at that time. So man, oh man, this nanny, any nanny, has been at Robyn's house for a long time, you guys. I hadn't really given that any thought at all. I just thought her having a nanny at any point was weird because there's so many wives in this family and a husband. Like, y'all can't watch your kids, that many adults. But I didn't even give any thought at all to how long she had actually had a nanny. Years and years Robyn has had a nanny come to this house, and I don't know why it didn't even cross my mind to think of the length of time. But yes, Aspyn did live with Robyn and says it was fine. I did think it was interesting. Mykelti pointed out, well, didn't you have time to bond then? And Aspyn sort of nodded. And I'm like, I feel like Kelty may be pushing a little bit to try to smooth things over. But I also want to be fair. I don't know that for a fact. She didn't really say much. She let Aspyn do the talking, but I'm still looking. I'm a little suspicious to see if there's any like bias in the interview with Mykelti trying to support Robyn and Cody, but nothing too obvious in this one. So we'll see. We'll see in the future. They move on to talking about their childhoods, and Tony tells Aspyn that Mykelti saw her as a mother figure because Christine had to go to work, and Aspyn is totally surprised. Now, remember, there are only 15 months between Aspyn and Mykelti, so there's not really this huge age difference, so you can tell that Aspyn is surprised to hear this. But Mykelti says she remembers Aspyn making meals for her and tucking the other kids in at night. Now, Mykelti says that she viewed her as being very motherly, but Aspyn said she didn't feel that way. She thought it was just a normal part of being an older sibling. She doesn't have any negative view about what happened. She says there was only one time things, didn't go well, and it really stands out as being negative. And it was a situation where Christine got home late and got upset with the kids because the house was a mess. But she said she felt like it was a moment they had that made them realize that the expectations were too high, that things needed to change. And so she felt like it was a moment that changed things for her and kind of changed the way her mom put responsibility on her. So I just want to point something out, though. From my perspective as a viewer and as an outsider, none of this should have happened. And the reason I'm saying this is because, you know, you all know this. I'm probably saying exactly what you're all thinking. There were 2 other wives. Mary had 1 kid. If they're family, Mary should have been in there helping. You know, like, this didn't have to. If you're a single mother or a family where both adults have to work and you have no outside help, you know what? I can understand putting some responsibility on an older sibling. But there are multiple adults within this one family, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm a little bit surprised that kids don't talk about it. I'm surprised during the conversation it wasn't brought up. Like, but you know what, Aspyn, you shouldn't have had to have put anyone into bed because essentially we had 2 other moms in the house. So and I'm not blaming Mary necessarily or Janelle necessarily. Like, there's something just happened in the dynamics of these women. And I know, I know something, guys. I know what some of you are going to say. We've heard about how Mary is. Maybe Christine was like, Mary's not coming around my kids. Fine. But then Janelle could have, or Cody could have. Cody could have said, hey, you know what, Mary, you're not treating those kids very well, and there's some issues here, so I got to go put them into bed tonight. I got to go make sure they have dinner. Like, what was going on? What? Why? I'm never going to understand it, guys. Anything positive they wanted to show us about polygamy, I think stories like this, it just takes that all away. Because the whole selling point for polygamy is that you get this huge family. There's so much love. Forget it. I don't think that at all. I don't think this family wasn't the family to show that. This wasn't the family that was going to prove it to me. And it's things like this that make me realize, like, sorry. I'm going off a little bit here. It's stories like this where you realize they weren't all playing on the same team. So anyway, I'm going to get back on track and tell you what the interview was about. So they talk about the childhood years, and Aspyn doesn't feel negative about it. She says she liked having that responsibility because it gave her some extra privileges. Like, she was treated a little bit more adult-like than the other kids. So she said she liked it. Aspyn also said she felt like when she got to college, she finally got to act her age. So, you know, she says that's true about her, and Mykelti points out that is what Logan sort of did as well. They really embraced being college students and having fun, and they say they felt like that was because of how they were treated at home and how they needed to be mature when they were growing up. So she sort of got to go out there and be her own person and do her own thing during the college years. Aspyn ends up turning this question about growing up and, you know, how they've entered into adulthood. She kind of turns it around onto Mykelti and Tony and asks them, what has inspired you two to be so successful? And Mykelti says she wants better for her kids. She wants her kids to have the toys they want. She wants them to have their own rooms. She wants them to just have more than she got. So I think that's interesting. I think that shows that they felt like they really didn't have everything they needed, which doesn't surprise me or any of you probably. But Tony also shares a little bit more about his own life. He says that growing up, you know, they were okay, but money was really tight sometimes, and they didn't get to do everything that they wanted to do. And he just wants more for his kids. He said one of the memories that really gets to him is thinking about when his brother wanted to play high school football. And I guess his brother is just a really big guy and had a lot of potential, but his family didn't have the money to pay for it. So ultimately he couldn't keep playing the sport. And that always stuck with him. He just wants his kids to have the opportunity to have more. Like, if they're good at something, he wants them to do it. I said in a previous video, but I'm going to say it again. The more I see and hear Tony talk, and I see him with Mykelti and the babies, you know what? The more I like him. He just seems like a nice guy. So I just wanted to throw that in there. As the interview starts to come to an end, there is a Q&A. The questions are submitted from people that subscribe to Mykelti and Tony's Patreon. The first question ends up being about if Aspyn worries that Mitch will want to, you know, be a polygamist in the future, or if she ever worried about it. And Aspyn says 5 weeks into dating, she told him it was a deal breaker. She knew she wanted no part of it, but she did worry in the very beginning that he might have wanted it because Mitch's brother has multiple wives and his sister is a sister wife. So she sort of wondered if that was something he wanted, but she says now she knows it's an absolute no from both of them. She says she feels certain he doesn't want it and that they both realize it would just end up hurting their marriage. So for them, absolutely, it's a no. Mykelti says there was a time that she would tell Tony it was an option, like, do you want to have more than one wife? But he always declined. So when she was saying it, I'm not really sure she was being serious. I think she knew Tony would always say no. So if you know your partner is always going to say no, it might be funny to just bring it up. But he says he was never even going to consider it, and it's clear she knew it. The next question is about organized religion. Aspyn says that they are not following any faith. She does not intend to raise any future kids following any faith. That's just, they're not interested in that. There's also a question about if she wishes her parents had never been on the show. And Aspyn says no, like she likes that they went on the show. And when she's asked this, she turns around and kind of says to Mykelti, you know, what was our parents' goal when they started this show? And Mykelti says to get out of poverty and enlighten people about polygamy. And so they kind of end up discussing that. And Mykelti says that even though it didn't really turn out well, it did help because it got polygamy out of being something that was done in secrecy. Like now people are more open to it, and she thinks the show was a part of that. And of course it did help get them out of living in poverty. So for all intents and purposes, the show did what the Browns wanted it to do, even though their marriages didn't turn out well. So the last thing they end up talking about, or the last few things, kind of brief and quick, there's a question about who's the favorite son-in-law, and you know, they all agree that Caleb was the favorite son-in-law of Cody in the beginning, but now it's Tony. So Caleb was the original, Tony is now the favorite son-in-law, and that Mitch is Christine's favorite son-in-law. So that was kind of funny. I remember with Caleb, Cody, there was no denying that Cody really liked Caleb. So I wasn't surprised by that answer. There was also some talk about the potential of a spinoff with the Brown kids. And you know what? With Aspyn, it was very clear. She said no. She has no interest in it. She doesn't really have anything to say. She's an overthinker, and she realizes it wouldn't even be healthy for her to be on a spinoff. But Mykelti says the idea is intriguing because it would be a place for them to speak their truth. You know, it would be interesting as a fan of the show to see the kids go out there and, you know, have a show and have a platform. But I think today, the way social media is, there's enough platforms for them to choose. They can go on YouTube, they can go on Patreon, they can go on Instagram, they can go on TikTok. There are places for them to go and be in control. Like, they have control on these places. They're not signing their life away to TLC. They can go and share what they want to share. So I think they're better off staying away from TLC, getting wrapped back up in that world with Cody and with Robin. And I just think they're better off doing it this way. So I think them going this route, you know what, good for them. As a viewer, I'm fine with that. I'm excited that these kids are finding ways to make money from this because their dad threw them out there. You know what I mean? And we've heard that Cody wanted there to be some sort of contract, or, you know, he wanted it to be possible to sue them if they talked bad about them. So we see how he works. We see what his agenda is. He's worried about himself. Good for them for finding an avenue to make money and take care of themselves. I hope they realize, like, their dad was worried about himself. He's worried about poverty and himself at this point. These adult kids, if they want to share, there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it and make money. They're in control of how they handle it. So, yeah. I don't know. I just wanted to share what the interview was like. If you guys are interested in actually hearing the whole thing, I totally recommend going over there and subscribing it. I mentioned before the lowest subscription is $3.99 with Mykelti and Tony. The highest goes up to $9.99. Yeah, totally. If you're into it, go subscribe. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and like here, and come back to Happily Ever Reality to talk more about Sister Wives and your other favorite reality TV shows.